Welcome back, everybody, to Consider the Lilies. We are so excited to have Cheryl McKay on the podcast. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Cheryl, you have been professionally writing since 1997, and before creating, show running, and executive producing the multi-award winning season 1 of These Stones, you wrote the screenplay for The Ultimate Gift, which stars so many incredible actors and actresses. It has the Academy nominee Abigail Breslin. You co-wrote faith-based feature films and so many other incredible projects. We're so excited to have you.
Well, thank
And
you. I appreciate it.
Brooklyn, go for it.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Yeah, we love that you're here with us today and to share about these stones. But our first question will be, the podcast is called Consider the Lilies, mainly because we love how God looks at the whole picture of life. So where have you seen God consider the little and the small things in your story lately?
Well, first of all, I have to just thank you guys for that wonderful question because I took a lot of time yesterday to think about it. And I love being able to dive into things like that. And it challenged me in some good ways. But first, I just want to share a cute little thing that God's been doing lately that's kind of silly. But we recently have taken in a rescue cat named Socks. And what's interesting in the little moments in life, like right now, I would consider this season of life to be like, it's about the bigger things, not the little things. In some ways, it's great and it's a good season, but it also can be way too busy. And we're putting in 80 hours a week. And that part of it's been very difficult to just stop and take a moment and appreciate the little. And like this little guy has been the one that arrests me during the day, where he just says, would you just stop and pay attention to me? And I might have my laptop on my lap and he's going to jump in and he's going to take over, and he's either going to delete the file that I'm working on if I'm not careful, or he's going to hit send on an email or a social media post before it's ready. So I appreciate the gift that he has been to slow me down a little bit in this season. With the show about to come out, that has been a challenge for me on the time. But additionally, one thing I wanted to share with you was that as I sat and thought about it, you're asking about where's he been in the small things in our story. And so yesterday to prepare, I was like, I know I've told Brooklyn a bazillion times in the past while that her song is kind of on autoplay when I'm on YouTube. Specifically, well, Seasons Change is always first and then Rise. But yesterday I thought, instead of just letting it play in the background, I just want to stop and I want to listen to it. And I found myself crying, and I found myself really touched by the words that you put in that song. And it's because I feel like lately I sometimes fail at what you're asking, which is to notice God in the little things. And to me, just being able to stop and listen to words that you wrote that were so inspired by God, where you talk about the seasons changing, because I may say I'm in a big season, but I also know there's the little seasons, there's the waiting seasons, there's the times when you're like, you don't know what God is going to be up to next. And he's a behind the scenes God. So sometimes we don't know what he's doing on our behalf, and we feel like we're just sitting there on a shelf. And so I love that in your song, you both talk about that difference, that he's the same God, no matter what season we're in. And I love the encouragement that we're supposed to be on our knees to be with him, because I think that's something that I have been guilty of lately with these 80-hour work weeks, all the juggling that's going on with the show. And I appreciate that you guys are actually planting these seeds in people that you have on your show, that we need to remember to look for God in the little things. And I wanted to show you, for people who happen to watch this on video, I'll just read it for your podcast listeners, but I have a sign that it's not the end of your story.
Oh, that's
And
powerful.
Yeah.
to me, that's what God is doing, even in the small moments.
Yeah.
All of those small moments are part of the whole story that he is using to tell with our lives.
Wow,
It's really good.
that's amazing. Oh man, I almost got actually emotional there.
Yeah.
No, that's powerful, because like you said, we get so caught up in the big things, and it's good things. I don't think they're
Yeah.
bad things.
Yeah.
But like you said, we get so caught up in it that we're like, okay, but if we just stop and breathe for a second, just like
Breathe. What's that?
even now, yeah, what is that? What is that? But it's true, like, because it's been chaotic for us, even with what we're doing today, which everyone will know later, I guess. But
Yeah. We'll hear the
news
news later.
But it's just like you just almost feel like you're getting in this space, and then sometimes when something kind of shakes it a little bit, you're just a little, I don't know, like you kind of I guess you could
The
feel,
anxiety comes in.
yes,
Yeah.
and you find
Yes.
yourself like kind of so focused in, and so it gets, and again, a good thing, it can be great,
Hmm.
but you get so caught up in it that it's just like that's your whole world almost. And it's like,
Hmm.
whoa,
Yeah.
have I taken control too much? Have I
Yeah.
have I been putting that first before anything else? And really, we're supposed to put the Lord in front of it
Mhm.
all, because He's
Yeah.
the one that just brought us these stories and these gifts and these talents and these moments with people that we love. And it's like, this is just a gift for us to be able to even do this, to even share
Hmm.
about what He's given us,
Yeah.
these
Right.
stories. And like with these stones, I'm
Yeah.
just so excited to see how people see this, because it's touched my heart. The episodes that I saw, I
Yeah.
literally was like moved by. Very
Well,
good.
thank you.
Very
I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
yeah.
It
So
is it is definitely an inspiring story. Like, what inspired you to make these stones come to life?
Well, I love your phrase in that, the come to life, because of the concept behind it with these Bible characters. So the way that this came to me was my friend Jeanette Town, who is also one of our executive producers, told me that her pastor had written a play during the COVID era. His name's Tim Stevenson, and it had a lot of these scenes, like these two-person scenes between people who needed help and these Bible characters. And so he ended up partnering with another lady named Peggy Porter to come up with a book manuscript. And so Jeanette, was talking to him about it, and was like, Cheryl needs to see this, and I think there's something here. And so the seed of the idea came from Matthew 27, and it's that verse that you'll hear Cameron Arnett's character talk about in the pilot, and McKenna actually reads it in the second episode that you haven't seen yet. But it's about when Jesus died on the cross and the tombs were broken open, and then when he's raised from the dead, all the saints, they came out of their graves and just started walking around town and talking to people. So this pastor asked himself this brilliant what if that was like, well, what if they're still here? What if they never left? The Bible doesn't tell us what happened to those people. And so we decided to fictionalize that idea and turn that into a show. Like, I first read it and I was like, I don't really think this is a movie, especially because there are so many Bible characters that we could dive into that I couldn't pick just a couple for the sake of a movie. And I was like, this is a TV series waiting to happen. And so I talked to them about, well, how about if I take this idea and come up with a family to put around, like the whole thing with McKenna and the Stewart family and the loss of the mother? Because I knew that when you do a television show, people want to come back to see the same people every week. So I created their whole storyline of loss and how she comes about helping these Bible characters and matching them with people who they need to work with and helping them with their undercover roles. Like, that to me is one of the most fun things to play with, is having these Bible characters have to pretend that they are other things first. And then when they get the chance, they can reveal who they really are. And kind of like that Touched by an Angel feeling when the angels finally told people that they were angels. So, but we really hope that we could take this idea, turn it into a long running series. We've made the first season for it for now. And then, but we hope from there we would be able to do a bunch of seasons and see it come to life for a long time. We don't want it to just be 6 episodes.
no.
I love it.
Yes, and there's, like you said, there's so much room for a lot of different stories and also
Yeah.
topics. Like the
Mhm.
topics that you cover, I mean, especially the episodes that I've seen, I was like, this isn't just a simple thing that's being discussed. It's like this is like the deeper parts of your heart and struggle,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
how God can come and just show you that you're not in a space, that you're not like too far gone to come
Mhm.
back into grace, love, and mercy. And
Right.
so that was just powerful to me that you guys touched on those different topics, like I said, that just aren't told, I guess, on the screen in
Mhm.
base
Yeah.
quality
Yeah.
films or series even. So that was very good. I love
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
So,
neat.
yeah. And our next question will be is what do you hope viewers take away from the series? That could be like social, emotional,
Mhm.
spiritual, psychological topics, either way. You really do take us on a journey with these characters. So what would you
Mhm.
say that would be?
Well, when I was coming up with the ideas for the 6 episodes, the first thing I did was make a list of what I would consider some of the hot button modern day issues that we all experience today. And then how do I then match those to things that people went through in the Bible so that it would be applicable to today? Because the Bible is so applicable and people forget that. They think, oh, that's back then. But if you start to break it down to the human form of what those people went through, it is very similar. They're just as flawed as we are. And so I was like, well, what do I want to start with? And so I started making that list, and I wanted to handle things like addiction and self-esteem issues in the episode that one of the ones you saw where we deal with promiscuity, it had always been a story that I wanted to tell about how promiscuity hurts us emotionally and not just physically. And to get a chance to look at the consequences that were not pregnancy and was not STD was really meaningful to me. I've been wanting to do that for years. And I loved also being able to look at fear, loss, and grief, and like, how do we deal with that? And what happens when we have these questions for God about why and when he gives a no. And so like you asked about those takeaways, I would hope that when someone watches the show, I feel like everybody's going to see something different in it and they'll find themselves in every episode, but maybe not the same way as another viewer would, because there's all these layers of emotion going on from different points of view from the characters, even if, like, let's say one of the episodes is about Grace. You're going to look at Grace from like 4 different angles in the same episode. And we have that every episode has a stone with a word on it. And that's how we bring that in. But we wanted everyone kind of going through parallel themes, even though their stories are different. And so on our poster for the show, we use the tagline, "You are never alone." And so if I were to say what I really hope people walk away from our show with is knowing no matter what you're going through, you are not walking alone. Someone is going to be there for you, and God is going to send people to you, and people who've been through things. Or even if we're willing to share our stories with people about things that we've been through that have been difficult, that we're going to be able to help other people through the challenges, and it actually redeems it. Like one of my favorite verses is Romans 8:28 about how God can work anything for good. And that's how I see this. Like we were able to actually take one of the episodes that you have not seen yet is one that is about myself and my husband. And we were able to kind of bleed on the page, so to speak, and talk about some difficult things that we went through to help others. And I've had a lot of people say that that episode hits them the most because it's the most like life and it's most like what it's like to go through disappointments. And so honestly, that's just really what I hope people will be able to take away from this show when they're watching it, even though it's going to be different for every person that's sitting there watching it. So
That's so good. And we had this, well, I had this conversation with a friend, and I think I brought you into this conversation too, where so often we elevate every character in the Bible. We put them up on a
yeah.
pedestal and we're like, oh my word, like
Yeah.
Mary, the mother of Christ, was like this larger than life human. Like, there's no way that my life can mirror hers. When actually, like, we are kind of similar, you know, like
Yeah.
she had a calling on her life, we have a calling on our lives. And to think that, you know, we're actually very similar humans. So I love that you kind of touch on that in what you're doing in your project that you're working on.
Yeah. You know, where that really came out in a fun way was this is my first copy. It's not out yet. It's coming out this month, but this is our book. We have a devotional that the director and I co-wrote that goes into every episode. So we're hoping churches and groups will get together and go through it. But she had a brilliant idea of in the devotional to talk about every episode. What is the humble pie you eat as that character? Like what did Aaron do that was a mess up? And what did Rahab do that was a mess up? And Sarah, she really messed up with Hagar. And so I love that she did that in those sections to say, they are just like us. They are just as flawed as us. They are not to be put up on some pedestal. We don't go into David yet this season, but can you imagine an episode about David? I mean, how flawed can you get?
Wild.
You know, I look forward to that, you know. So, but anyway, I love that you brought that up because, you know, I hope that that's something that people will be able to understand.
Yeah, that's good. What is a piece of advice that you would give to aspiring screenwriters?
A piece? Am I allowed to share a couple?
Share as much as you want.
We want to hear.
We want to hear it all.
Yes. Because there's practical and then there's spiritual. So I like to share both. But first, like, especially if they're aspiring and they haven't done a whole lot yet, besides the obvious of taking classes and going to conferences and getting critiques of your work, I would say to try to write something you're super passionate about, but only using it as a spec or as a sample to use and expect to use that to help you get hired for work. But don't expect to sell it. One of the hardest things to do is sell a spec script. I mean, in my 25-year career, I've never sold a spec script. I only write for hire, and I'll use those spec scripts and they go, oh, we love this. Here's a job. So that's usually how it works, is that even though I have some passion projects I would love to make, most of them are adaptations. So in that practical sense, I would say also learn the ins and outs of adaptation, whether it's books, true stories, like two of my movies, Indivisible and Extraordinary, that I co-wrote with the directors, were both based on true stories. My first feature film, The Ultimate Gift, was based on a self-help book. So if you learn that craft, you can get a whole lot more work. So taking your specs sample, like I have a passion project that I still want to make called Never the Bride that I will not let anyone else make. I'm only going to make that one myself. So I'm saving that for when I can actually produce it.
Yeah.
And so that way you're not giving away your babies. Let your other samples be the ones you sell and get made to try to get known if that's possible, but save your favorite for when you're able to actually produce it yourself. So, but on the spiritual side, I would say, please make sure you're always paying attention to what your messages are, because there is power in your pen, and your work is going to affect other people, and you need to pay attention to that, because it's almost like we're in the position of teachers, and teachers in the Bible are judged more harshly than others because we are influencing other people. And so I would just say, just make sure you really pay attention to what your messaging is and how you want people to react to what you wrote.
Yeah, that's good. That's very good.
Yeah.
Like you said, the influence, the impact, like we are inspired by the Lord, and we want to be sure that it's something that the Lord's been giving us to share with others and to inspire others in the direction of his love. So yeah, that's so good. I'm so glad you said it like that. And very good tips and advice, because yeah, like I've kind of tried to, I've actually, this is funny, I don't think I've told you yet, maybe I did, but I've tried to dabble a little bit in screenwriting, because I think stories are just sincerely, like, it's so cool. Somehow, like, when you create in your mind, you kind of like, you love the imagination. When you're involved in creative stuff, you find yourself kind of creating your own worlds, I guess, and how you I don't know, see things or view things. And so for some reason, I was thinking about how it's interesting. Like, I was trying my hand at it one time. I thought of you because I was like, interesting, because like that whole career as a screenwriter, there's a lot to it than just putting on the page. Like you said, there's the backstory of like, even where did this come from? Who's inspiring this? And why do you want to share this story? It's not just doing it for whatever reason. So that was a great thing to think about, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing that. So our next question will be, how have you seen God move within this project, these stones?
Well, I know that he has been with us from the beginning. It doesn't mean it hasn't been without its spiritual warfare. I think you guys have even touched on that a little bit ago. Like, when you're doing something and you know it's good and you know it can have an impact, you're going to have your challenges. So it certainly isn't without problems. But even if I look back to the writing process and feeling like God is my co-writer, and even though I'm not writing the Bible, so it's not perfect, so I have to do rewrites, at least I felt like his presence was there with me. And then partnering with Susan Rohr, my director, who also came in to the writing staff and would help me deepen the characters. And she knows the Bible more than I do. So she was really good at finding some of those nuggets, the wisdom that came out of those Bible characters' mouths and such like that. She had a large hand in that. And so that was super helpful. To get someone who was on the same page and bring it to life. But then I also was writing around actors that I wanted. Like, I wrote this role for Madeline Carroll without telling her about it for about 6 months. And praise God, she said yes. And I could see God's hand in that. Part of it was when she was doing promotions for I Can Only Imagine, she was on a talk show and someone pulled her backstage and prayed over her and said, when you turn 26, someone's going to come to you and tell you that they wrote a part for you and it's going to be a big blessing. And so that turned out to be this. And so that's part of the reason why we were able to get her, because God planted the seed in her 4 years before I came to her with this idea of wanting to do this for and with her. And then a lot of the other actors like Karen Abercrombie, Cameron Arnett, Charlene Amoya, and Catherine Shepler. I wrote all of these things with them in mind, hoping that we would be able to get the schedules to work. And that is in a place where I would consider God's divine hand, because not only was I the writer, I was the producer, and I did this line schedule that usually the first AD does. And I had actors that we got, like Catherine. She was available 2 days of 25. And I'm like, then we are shooting her episode on those 2 days. And I really hope everyone else she's in scenes with are available. Same thing with David DeSanctis, our young gentleman with Down syndrome in episode 2. He only had a 3-day window to do his 3 days because it was Down syndrome awareness month when we were shooting. And so, and a lot of his scenes were outside, so it couldn't rain. But when I look back on that 25 days in Georgia, Georgia, Southeast, didn't rain a drop. We had a hurricane come through. In the first episode, there's a really funny scene with Madeline and Cameron Arnett. Wind is blowing like crazy and it's sunny. That was the day of the hurricane. That's all we got was the wind. And so, because my AD kept saying, we're going to have to cancel this week. And I'm like, we can't cancel. There's not one schedule change that we can afford. No one got sick that canceled anything. Nobody had weather problems. Everybody made it there. I mean, all of that was so divine. And I knew that I had scheduled it too tightly to our detriment if anything had gone wrong. But we had a prayer team. Peggy Porter was one of the ones heading up the prayer team, the lady I mentioned that helped with the book manuscript. And we had warriors on our team like that. And so those are the ways so far. And then in the early screening, seeing how people have responded so far and what has hit them. And what I hope, though, is I have a better answer for you later once it's actually out and more people have had a chance to experience the show.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that right there,
Yeah.
like that is God's hand. And I just love that. Cause even with, like we talked to, well, I guess I shouldn't spoil that, but we talked to one of your stars and, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
Like even the story that she shared, like just that, like God's divine hand, like sincerely in all of that. And so, and I can see it like on the screen, just how sincere everyone has taken these roles. Like I actually can see in their eyes that they mean what they say.
Yeah.
And that is something that is very special with an actor that really means what they say and does it in the most caring and gracious and even real and raw way.
Yeah.
And that's what I see in these stones. And like that's powerful because again, 2 episodes, all I saw, but I'm like, I want to see more. I want to know what's going on and like with these people in their lives. And like I felt the care, even in your writing, I just felt the care was there.
Thank
and
you.
I was like, yeah, that really meant a lot to see that. And so I think it's going to touch a lot of people, and especially hearing your backstory. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's so important, like in your work, to see when you know that something is like God ordained, to see all those things fall into place. Like I see it so often. I see both sides in the music world where you see like things, people just struggle and struggle and they're like pushing to make something happen. And they're like, well, it's not happening. So we're just going to keep pushing. And I'm like, stop rubbing the sandpaper together because it's not going to happen. Just let it like release it.
Yeah.
And then I'll see those moments where it's like everything is just lining up perfectly. And that's when you know like God's in it and God's going to make it happen.
Yeah.
Amen. Well, and amazingly, we shot 3.5 hours of content in 25 days. That's the equivalent of 2 movies. We didn't know we were shooting that much. I thought it was going to be 2.5. But the fact that we got that much stuff, because some of our scenes had to be shot 4 times. When you have a scene and you have everything on a different monitor, that's another scene, but only on 1 page of script. Yeah. And so it was really, really complicated. And we only didn't shoot 1 scene out of the entire thing. And I voluntarily let them not shoot it the day that they asked me if it was okay if they cut that scene. And I said, that's about the only scene you can cut, because every script was only 24 pages. And if you start unraveling and not shooting scenes, no, those episodes will not make sense.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Wow.
So,
that's wild.
Yeah.
Wow. So how can people keep up with you with this film and all the other projects that you may have coming down the pipeline? And how can we be praying for you?
Yeah.
Well, you can first to follow us, our regular website, the company that made this, Stone Impact Media. We have stoneimpactmedia.com, and on that you can link to these stones. We have all our social media links on there, but the shorthand of Facebook, we have These Stones, a series, like if somebody looks up that phrase. I also have a writing website called Purple Penworks people can look up. But how to pray, we have this big release coming, and I pray that we not only that people will find it. You know how that is when you first put something out there, and it's going to be on Up Faith and Family starting September 5th. We're an exclusive release from them first on streaming. Eventually we will be going to all the rentals and downloads and purchases, and maybe we hope for cable. That would be another good prayer request there. But those things in time. And we're going international starting in January, so pray about that transition as well. But I just pray that people not only find it, but are moved by it. And one of the things that we did in this book, that the devotional book that goes with it, is there's something in there called activations. And we have activities that come that are inspired from the show. And we want people to go out into the world and affect the other people around them in positive ways. And we're sort of hoping that if people do this, that other people's lives are going to be changed in good ways because of it.
Yeah. greater
So that's
impact.
great. Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
awesome.
Yep,
It.
that's
Yeah.
it.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Same time.
But thank you sincerely. It was wonderful to hear your heart behind the series. And I hope that, yeah, like you guys can reach the people, the hearts that need this. And I love the challenge with giving to others like love and because we are loved by the Lord. And so yeah, I love it so
Thank
much.
you.
It's gonna be a really
Thank
great
you.
impact.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys.
Excited for
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to you, Cheryl, for taking the time and just sharing everything you shared with us. There's so many good nuggets of wisdom that people can
Yeah.
take away.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on Consider the Lilies.
Yeah.